Hello everyone, it's me, Riffraff Hornhelm, and I'm back again with another presentation for the Dwarven Vault, and today we're starting something new. Now you've seen the character reviews we do and the fail tales and the interviews and specials, but this is another review series, and in this case we're going to be reviewing monsters. What we're going to do is start with the original monster manual, and the focus on this particular series is on basic entry-level creatures, mainly because people tend to forget about them or think that they don't have a good place even in a higher level dungeon. In many cases this is true, but they're really interesting creatures and ones that, as players, you tend to involve yourself with at one time or another, and as a DM, we tend to forget to use them as often as we should. So, in today's series on these entry-level monsters, we're going to start off with a very simple one, and it's one called the Piercer. Now, as you can see, what do they look like? Well, they look like stalactites. And really, what's that? Well, it's just a bit of dangly rock inside of a cave. It's a little bit more involved than that, but at the same time, from a creature standpoint, very simple. You hide them inside of any natural cavern which has naturally occurring rock ones, and use them to drop onto adventuring parties as they pass through that particular area of the dungeon. Now, in the context of the original Dungeons & Dragons, the first monster manual, these are about as simple as they get. And the explanation is, shall we say, limited. They drop, from the ceiling onto their victim, and they have a high chance of surprise. And once they drop on their victim, they devour them. Great, right? Simple. Yeah, it always left some real problems for me because it's like, well, exactly how do they devour them? And what happens to the remains after they're devoured? And then, really important to me, how do they get back there to get their next victim? Can you explain that? I struggled with it a bit, and then, like many DMs out there, you adapt things to make it happen. So, it varies from dungeon master to dungeon master as to how you operate a piercer, but they're great at being a disguised way of assaulting a party. A great random wandering monster if they're inside a natural cave system, or even better, setting them up as traps. And I always love traps, or so they tell me. But I think it's interesting that you can use these and then you can kind of adapt them based on what rules you set up for your dungeon as the DM to make them work. To me, the devouring part was always, okay, that's got to be in the big end. Somehow they're able to flex and move so that they can ingest whomever they've just destroyed. Not sure where it all comes out again, but it doesn't really matter. As to how they get back up, well, their teeth also kind of act as a way of gripping things. And they'll move around until they're able to find a cave wall or another natural rock stalactite and use that to ascend back to the roof of the cavern and reattach themselves to wait for the next party to come along. Now, one of the things that's forgotten about piercers is that they vary in size. If you read the description in the book, they can get as much as, I believe it's 500 pounds. That's a pretty big chunk of rock and would do significant damage based on gravity, if nothing else. The number that appear, I believe in the book, is 3 to 18. But the reality is you can put as many in there or as few as you want. if you're setting them up as part of a dungeon. And as a random 3 to 18, that's pretty good. If you have a real large party or powerful party, maybe you double that. Or if it's a real weak party, maybe you cut it in half or in thirds. But however you cut it up, they're an interesting, quick, easy encounter from either a player standpoint, where it's a brief heart-pounding moment, or from a DM standpoint, if you're trying to tickle your party a little bit. So, from a player standpoint, I rank them as a low risk, not one that's difficult to defeat when you run into them, but one that has a very good chance of surprising you and doing some damage to you pretty much throughout the spectrum of whatever character class or level you are, with obviously some exceptions, depending on the reaction of the people involved, whether they are truly surprised, and the degree of armor or protection that they may have. But for medium to low level dungeons, these can be a real shocker. And from a DM's perspective, they're wonderful to use. I think they're a great one. Like many of the other low-level, entry-level type monsters that existed way back at the start of D&D. So, overall ranking on something like this would have to be pretty low, probably a 2. That ranking level kind of changes in perspective based on what level you are as a player, but they're generally going to be fairly low. From a DM's perspective, I'd actually rank them a little higher, probably about a 3, because of how disruptive they can be and how much fun they are to play, and frankly, how easy they are to play and manage. So, that's a view of the Piercer. Once again, I mean, always refer back to the original material, though, like I said, there's really not a lot there when it comes to a Piercer, so have an active imagination, as I think you always need to have when you play a role-playing game. The rules are always more guidelines than being fixed lore. It's something that you can change based on what you need for your dungeon or what you need as a character to deal with or live with. And it's important that you remain flexible. What do they say? Flexible minds. Flexible minds in role-playing games, really important. I hope you enjoyed our first presentation here on the Monster Reviews. We'll be back with another one very soon. Once again, entry-level monsters. And we'd love your comments and feedback. If you did enjoy, please hit that like button, subscribe to us. That would be really cool. And tell your friends. And join us again for another episode in the near future. Take care, everyone. And remember, Dwarves rock!